All right, gentlemen, it looks like the numbers have stopped going up quite a bit, so we'll go ahead and jump in here. Once again, my name is Sara Bloom. I'm the Executive Director for Downtown Hays Development Corporation in Hays, Kansas, an ITGA board member, and here in Hays, we are home to Fort Hays State University Tigers. Before we jump into the introductions of the other panelists today, we want to take just a second of your time to welcome you to the Town Gown Turnaround Initiative's kickoff event. Town Gown Turnaround will focus on strengthening the partnerships between town and university stakeholders and how those partnerships can turn around downtown areas, increase retail sales, extend campus life boundaries, make positive impacts in the communities they represent, and more. So through this initiative, we want to hear and share your successes and failures so that we might all learn together. And I'm quite humbled to be a part of this launch, but can really take very little credit for its creation. So please allow me to recognize and thank Jeff Murrison, the President and CEO of Hillsborough Street Community Service Corporation in Raleigh, North Carolina, Matt Costello, Executive Director of Eau Claire Promise Zone in Columbia, South Carolina, and of course, ITGA's own director, Beth Bagwell. These three individuals are the creators of Town Gown Turnaround and the reason that this webinar is taking place today. But without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Keith, Adam, and Doug to introduce themselves so that we can get started. Adam, do you want to get us started with introductions, sir?
Sure. Nice to be with everybody. I'm Adam Ducker. I'm a Senior Managing Director at RCLCO. We are a real estate analytics and management consulting firm. And one of the things that I'm very interested in is college town retail districts, what makes them work, and how cities, institutions, and business owners can collaborate to make those districts work. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges of doing that during and after COVID later this morning.
Perfect. Keith, how about you?
No problem, Sarah. I'm Keith Stanley, Executive Director of the Near West Side Partners, a slice of the historic city of Milwaukee. And I'm glad to be here.
All right, and Doug, last but not least.
My name is Doug Schneider. I'm here in New Brunswick, New Jersey, which is adjacent to Rutgers University. And we are, I own a few restaurants here. I am also very proud to be the chairman of the board of directors for the New Brunswick City Center, which is our downtown business alliance here in New Brunswick.
Very good. Well, thank you all for joining us. I'm very excited about this webinar today and to be a part of it. I told Beth very early on, I was very by getting to the same Zoom room as each of you. So thank you very much for being here. For those watching, this is going to be a pretty informal webinar. These gentlemen are all going to talk about what's happening in their communities or different statistics that they can share with us. And then we're going to open it up and let them ask each other questions and evaluate, for the most part, what's happening in each of those communities. And then if we have some time, we've got some submitted questions that we'll also be asking at the end. Feel free to ask questions as we go, and we will share contact information at the end too. All of us are very willing to answer questions following the webinar. But without further ado, we're going to let Adam Ducker kick us off with a few slides and talk a little bit about where we were pre-COVID, where we are now, and kind of the mindset that we need to be in moving forward. So Adam, take it away. Great.
And I'm going to spend just maybe 5 minutes sort of framing up some of this, because you'll have a chance today to hear from three people who are, kind of fighting this battle every day, which will really be interesting. But if you go to the next slide, I often kind of use, if you flip the slide, or am I flipping the slide?
Douglas is flipping the slide. There we go.
I often kind of use this slide just to kind of help people contextualize how college town retail districts work, right? In America, actually in Western society, a lot of colleges were really and universities were built on the monastic model, right? The institution, the gown sort of sat on the top of the hill, and the town or the village or the city, kind of sat in the valley, and the economic engine of the town supported the institution, and the spiritual and academic and intellectual life of the institution supported the town, and they kind of met at a hard edge, right? Like right outside the gates of the monastery was where the marketplace existed. And today it's not as perfectly organized in that in many places, right? But that idea of there's this commercial zone where town and gown meet is kind of critical to understanding what makes college town retail both so exciting, right? Why people love these places and why they help define the communities where they exist, and also why it's so challenging to succeed with them in a period of time that we're in right now, right, where people's kind of socializing and shopping behavior is radically different. If you change the slide, in our work, yeah, one more slide forward, we get a chance to look at what is the actual composition of retail sales activities. One more slide, if you don't mind, Doug. Oh, I'm sorry, not Doug. What is the actual, and actually maybe even one more, I'll just pause for a second here. You know, needless to say, you know, retail markets in America are just under tremendous pressure, right? And you can sort of see some of the change in activity by category of retailer on the left, and then what the change in retail spending is on the right. And the problem is in many of our college towns, right, where students are not around or around in reduced numbers, and people are just shopping less, the pattern is even more dramatic. And in fact, you know, a lot of the rebound that we saw in the middle of last year has been even slower in college districts. And one of the reasons that's so difficult, if you move forward one more slide, is that the thing that makes college districts work, right, the dollars that are generated are not just the students. In fact, you know, we look at spending in college districts again and again. And if you flip the slide, please. What we see is that students in some cases represent, in fact, in a lot of places, represent not more than 20 to 25% of the spending in any given community. And that it's actually visitors from outside of the market that are a significant share, and people sort of in other parts of the community. And what they're attracted to is that energy, right? The energy that the students bring and the kind of eclectic mix of activities that these kind of multi-generational, organic, and exciting districts represent. They're very different than going to the mall. And, you know, without the students and without the kind of gathering, right? Ironically, it's the lack of social distancing that makes college districts fun to be in. So when we're in this mode where we have to, you know, sort of stay separate, it's a lot harder to experience that. So I'll just frame up a couple of things if you flip forward one slide, you know, that communities are working on, and, you know, Keith and Doug and Sara will share some of them. You know, now is the time to act like one. I think in the last decade, we've really seen the emergence of the College Town Business Improvement District, an idea that the institution, the merchants or the business owners and the city or other group are acting in a collaborative and coordinated fashion to kind of drive that activity, right? One of the things that owners look at to sort of like help their retailers survive is the idea of free rent, but that's just the start. I mean, I think the story of retail owners in America has been one of support and concession and generosity, but we really have to kind of encourage our retail owners, which is sometimes the institution, sometimes the city, but that the economics of running businesses, retail businesses today are super, super challenging. And among other things, we have to like train and support retailers in everything from, you know, neat and clean in the era of COVID to, you know, getting stores ready to reopen, whatever that might be. A lot of college towns have done great things about getting dining out of doors as we look at the spring. That's something that I think people will double down on. I bet people will talk about that today. You know, we wanna get back to the kind of programming, the farmers markets and the gatherings and the outdoor entertainment that has been a real magnet to college town districts, and hopefully we can do that responsibly, but increasingly vigorously this fall. a lot of districts, and we might hear about this today, have been working on getting students and really everybody kind of out of their cars. It's hard to get people to use the shuttle or think about public transportation, but there are a lot of strategies to do that. Maybe we'll hear about that today. Bikes, pedestrian safety, but a way to sort of get people kind of back on the streets. And just a few last thoughts that we can come back to if we have time. Right, there's vacancy now in our districts, and we want to kind of give people some tools. These are some examples of some of the analytical tools that owners and institutions are working on, and it's a good time to kind of begin to really think about what's going on in your districts and how do we help. And I should probably stop there and turn it over to some of the practitioners, but I hope this helps sort of frame some of the challenges that everybody's facing at the moment.
Perfect. We have one question on slide 6. Julia asked, with the visitors being on the chart, could that include the friends and family of students though?
Yeah, absolutely. It's 3 groups, right? It's friends and families of students. It's people who just come to town sort of as a destination day event, right? We sort of see that people will kind of go and spend a day at, Charlottesville or Athens or, Boulder, and that sort of is an activity. And then the last thing is like really great college districts kind of become, places where people want to, recreate, whether it's business travelers or people who come for a game and stay for lunch and shopping and dinner. And there's all kinds of people that make up that visitor categories. The thing is, this is a virtuous cycle, right? And the more energy you get and the more kind of diversity in the shopping and dining and the like they get, the more people kind of want to come and the more they're interested in coming back.
All right, Doug and Keith, any questions or comments for Adam before we move on?
I would say, Sarah, there's a number of different things, Adam, that resonate with the slide, and I can't wait with your that you've outlined in your slide that resonate with me, and so I can't wait to jump into it. But I will say the one that I like is really the energy that the students bring, and we find that. And for those, I didn't share this earlier, Marquette University is in our business improvement district and in our target area as far as nonprofit. So I'm excited about some of the things you've outlined already, because that is definitely true.
Right, and Adam, we've got one more question from the audience watching. Is the pie chart of audience mix a generalization of a typical market or a specific location?
Yeah, a generalization of a healthy market, right? And where it comes from is we do this in college districts, around the country, and it's kind of like an aggregate of places that that really do have kind of a somewhat definable college retail district, and that are in fact robust enough that people are visiting them. So for some communities it might be aspirational but it's remarkably similar when we look at kind of these vibrant districts. So it's an aggregate, but it's also, I think, worth thinking about a target, right? So if your community really doesn't see that level of visitation, or people leave, we sometimes work in communities where even people who live nearby, in fact, leave the community to do a lot of their shopping or dining, then that's sort of a like aspirational model of thinking about, a mix of retail and the character of retail and shopping that would achieve that kind of option. And you have to do that, right? Because students are gone months of the year, and it's very difficult to, to sort of have a vibrant district if you're just, feeding and providing iPhone chargers, for students, during the semester.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you, Adam. Again, feel free to jump in as we start sharing what is happening inside each of the communities that we represent. But we're going to move on and let Doug talk about some of the things that are happening in his location. Doug, I'm very excited for you to talk, because not only are you head of a downtown association, but you are a business owner. So you come at this with a very unique perspective, but very excited to hear what you are doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. It's an honor to be here. I hope that everyone, gets a lot out of this today. In New Brunswick here, again, we are on the doorstep of Rutgers University, which we have a bit of, everything kind of was the perfect storm. So we have a university that is in an area that the pandemic struck first. The Northeast, specifically New York, New Jersey, got hit very, very early on. We also have a university that is very conservative in its way of bringing students back or sending them home, et cetera. So since March, the university has been all virtual. In many cases, it's not like that. So we're truly relying on our downtown business. That pie chart that Adam shows really strikes a chord with me, because that piece of the pie that's the students at Rutgers here, it's basically that pie has been eaten, you know, so besides the pandemic. So what we realized early on is that we had to work through a lot of the mechanics involved with this. By mechanics, I mean the sidewalk cafe permitting, the street closures, the things that in any town, how do we create a business survival plan that can get retailers and hospitality to the point that they could at least make a go of it, okay? You're always going to have the disengaged that say, you know what, it's easier to close my doors. But what our job in the business district is to work with City Hall and figure out ways that we could set people up with the best policies and the best opportunity to succeed when they have the enthusiasm and the energy to do so. Well, in New Brunswick, we had the luxury of such low foot traffic because of the university not being here, and all of the hotels and Johnson & Johnson headquarters is here. They're all virtual as well. So we were able to execute from a mechanics standpoint all of the things that are on Adam's list there, like sidewalk cafes and getting dining outside and working with retailers to promote pedestrian traffic, et cetera. We actually had our most vibrant summer that we could ever possibly imagine in terms of foot traffic in downtown New Brunswick, which was a silver lining to all of this. But what I will say is that we knew, even though these mechanics were important, that paramount to everything is consumer confidence and making sure people are comfortable coming out to our establishments, whether that's a restaurant or a retail store. So how do we do that? Well, what we did here in New Brunswick is we learned that if we help our businesses stay healthy, not just financially healthy by giving them opportunities policy-wise, but actual physical health, right? So it's on such a micro level that if you take care of, say, your kitchen at your restaurant, then your front of house staff, your waiters and waitresses and bartenders are healthy. And then thus your customers are healthy, and thus so on and so on and so on. And so we have, as we all have on this call, the luxury of having a university on our doorstep here. So what we were able to do is kind of navigate the huge bureaucracy of Rutgers and figure out who's enthusiastic about helping our businesses and who wants to step up and really get to the point where we could help us succeed. So one major thing we did was we partnered with New Brunswick City Center. Our downtown district partnered with the Rutgers Global Health Institute. And we did COVID testing for all of the businesses. Now, everyone says, well, we have COVID testing, or we have everywhere in the country has COVID testing. But what we learned early on was that there was not trust with our employees of all of our businesses. We rely on a heavily immigrant population in our hospitality businesses here in New Brunswick to work many, many hours and many, many roles. I mean, we have kitchens full of immigrants that are all hardworking. They did not trust the government to actually go to the testing sites that were operated by the state or the county. But if me, as their trusted employer, I have people with me for 20 years. If I said, listen, we have testing set up. This is for us, for New Brunswick businesses. Please come and get tested. We had so much success with this, and it was all due to the partnership with the Global Health Institute, with Rutgers, with the Saliva Lab at Rutgers that created the saliva testing. And we were able to utilize that partnership and really instill the trust with our employees, where each and every week, every Monday, we brought the testing to downtown. So in one of our large tents, right in the middle of our main street, we actually have the practitioners come and they do the testing on site. So all of the employees just simply have to come report to work essentially. And we are averaging well over 100 people each week getting tested, even till this day. And there's anecdotal stories all over town saying, wow, so-and-so got tested, they were asymptomatic. Next thing you know, they were quarantined for 3 weeks and they didn't get the rest of the restaurant or hotel or, et cetera, it's sick. So that's one thing. Well, that worked really well and it's still working well, but how do you parlay that into next level thinking? So we've created a curriculum in partnership with the Global Health Institute, and we're about to launch this in the next week or so. Each week we're coming up with new ideas, so it's exciting, but we're almost at the finish line to start our high road employer training that is all COVID related. So what we're doing is we're setting benchmarks for our employers in New Brunswick to meet. What do we emphasize? We emphasize things like communication, making sure that if an employee feels sick, if they have a fever, if someone in their household is sick, we emphasize in this training, you must communicate that with your employer. Feel comfortable doing so. You will not get in trouble if you do this. And, this has parlayed into another conversation where now we're on the precipice of the vaccination program. So how do we get now from we're testing and we're continuing to test to now we're training employers and we're training employees? By the way, this is an incentive-based thing where employees get a gift card for showing up and employers will be financially incentivized. And then we use the Rutgers partnership as our stamp of approval and the accreditation that now my restaurant or the Hyatt hotel in town could say, we are a high road employer and we are safe to stay at, to eat at. And not only am I telling you that, but Rutgers is telling you that I've been trained. So the unique part of what we're doing is that it's that consumer confidence where it's one thing to keep everyone healthy, but it's another thing to then go next level and tell everyone you're healthy. But it's one thing if the restaurant tells you they're healthy or if a third party kind of certifies it. And the reason people are excited about this is that everyone that has a business in New Brunswick looks at Rutgers as a potential partner for almost anything. Everyone looks at them and says, hey, you have, we need graphic design work done. Let's find a intern to do it for pennies on a dollar. So there's always this desire for these business owners that work hard every day in the city to partner with Rutgers. And this is a way we could actually all sit down at the table and help each other. And it's been very, very exciting. Now, instilling consumer confidence equates to dollars. And it's never been more relevant than today in this pandemic. So Adam said something that struck a chord with me as well, where he said, a typical college town, I guess, or I'm paraphrasing, but is the anti-social distancing, right? So all of the fun things you do in a college town, obviously is the opposite of what we need to be doing now. What we in New Brunswick strive to do is all of these things we design, our punchline always has to be fun, right? So people don't go out to eat because they want to be satiated and just eat and fill their stomachs. They want to go out and have something to eat, but also have fun while doing so, which brings you to the music and the entertainment and the atmosphere and all of the structural mechanical things you could put in place to succeed. And at the end of the day, once you instill the consumer confidence, you instill the health, it winds up being and leading to financial health. And that social fun aspect, I cannot emphasize enough. So as folks design whatever their post-pandemic, during pandemic, transitional pandemic plans are, don't forget on your dry erase board, write fun in big letters and point at it all the time. All the time. In New Brunswick, we have the best comedy club on the East Coast right now. We have wonderful music almost every night still to this day. And people are coming out. This weekend, it'll be 25 degrees and we have heated tents and we're doing things. But it's all because people need a place to go out and they're coming out because they're having fun. So, I could certainly, answer any questions offline about the Global Health Institute partnership. And hopefully there's going to be press every week. It seems like there's about to be some press releases and, it's happening in the next couple of weeks. So, everyone will hear about it. And, I look forward to any feedback.
Douglas, are the Rutgers students back on campus?
They are not. Rutgers announced this week that hopefully they'll all be back in September in one form or another. So it sounds like they're shooting for 100% in September, but that leads to the need for everyone to get vaccinated. So, we're hoping that this training program, which has such an overlap with Rutgers students, has such a good vaccination encouragement aspect to it that hopefully, it makes a dent in that as well.
I was more asking, I'm wondering how faculty, staff, and students were getting tested in conjunction with the business owners. You don't have to worry about it yet.
At this point, everyone's home.
Yep. Adam and Keith, any questions or comments for Douglas?
I just would share, Sarah, I think Douglas makes an excellent point. It reminds me of the term that we use when we work in our neighborhood. You have the security theater. So those of you, all of us, remember the days, for some of us, I should say, the before time when you didn't have to take your shoes off at the airport. You didn't have to go through. That is now what we have to do, taking our shoes off, going through the metal detectors and all this stuff is a part of security theater. It's not just to make people safe, but it's also to give you the confidence. And Douglas, you make an excellent point. I think that for our business districts, we have to provide not only the real, and I love that third party certification, we have to provide the realness of making sure people safe, but also the health theater. So having the tents, having the sanitizer, having the signs, all that's a part of the mentality of making sure people feel safe. They even can be safe, but it's more important that they feel safe so they can enjoy that social and fun experience you're talking about.
I've got a question for all of you too. We're talking about making modifications and incorporating fun and changing for the times. Thinking about modifying a business is one thing. Actually doing it 5 times harder, probably 10 times harder if we're in the middle of a pandemic. What advice do you have about helping a small business catch its breath and not just think about making these improvements and these changes, but to actually go through the motions to do it?
There are a couple things that make that hard, right? Today people don't have the confidence to sort of imagine a bright future, so it's hard to invest. But one of the things that makes it easier for people to invest is when they believe other people are investing at the same time, right? You just feel like you're not an idiot. Everybody else is doing the same thing. So, one of the things that communities could think about is, if the economic development department could invest X, it doesn't have to be a lot of money, right? But just show like we're spending some money doing X, Y, and Z. Like the host institution could do something, right? Make some grants available to do X, Y, and Z. It could be 2,000, 3,000. I mean, these are meaningful numbers for sort of small, meaningful business owners. By the way, you don't have to give it everywhere either. And then sort of say like, well, can people who own stores invest X, Y, and Z? Like, it's not that the dollars add up so much. It's that the confidence and sense of like being leveraged up is so much higher that people are willing to take a risk.
Something that I agree with Adam, and something that does not cost anyone money, but it costs a lot of time and effort, is the policy making. So what I'll point out is that most of the policy that's been developed has been reactionary to whatever situation we're in. So, for example, sidewalk cafes or outdoor dining regulations that have been peeled back. Many cities have said, you know what, we'll allow you to do things you've never been able to do before. And by the way, we won't charge you a permit to do so. Well, that's reactionary to what's happened. And by the way, in most cases, people have said, wow, why haven't we been doing this forever? Well, one local challenge that we have not gotten through yet, but I hope to at some point soon, is putting that new policy and mindset to paper. So this way, when there is a vacant storefront that we want to recruit a good operator to come in to open, let's say, a restaurant or a retail, that we could lure that person with good policy, right? So a big part of recruiting as a business district is always, hey, I know somebody that has a great business model in another city. Let's pull them in and add to our downtown and draw foot traffic in for all of us. And that is difficult to do when a lot of this policy hasn't been really put into concrete policy for the foreseeable future. So what I'm looking to do, one of my personal goals, is to make sure that we reformulate how we've thought of policies in town and make some of the changes we've done permanent. And that will help raise the enthusiasm level with small businesses that are looking to, imagine if you had square foot, you have 5,000 square foot inside, but now suddenly you have an extra 1,000 outside, and that doesn't really cost you anything. It's suddenly, from a financial perspective, a win for everyone.
One last idea, or maybe the fourth, we always say the public-private partnerships, but if there was a fourth letter in the partnership, it's the neighborhood. And I actually think that people in this business should actually think about using the language of investment, with neighbors, right? Like some college towns are doing very creative things, right? Like, buy a meal for, a frontline worker to help support your neighborhood restaurants, or, buy a gift card to spend on, something this summer, or, treat a college kid to a burrito, there's kind of creative stuff. And I think the reason it's a good idea is not because it's going to generate huge dollars, but to Douglas's point, it contributes to the fun, and it tries to convert your customers into stakeholders. And all these things are logistically complicated, and who has time, but they pay off.
And Adam, I would add to that. I think you bring up an excellent point, because what I usually have to do is, I don't know, Adam and Douglas, if you do it this, or even Sarah, is that when we do get new businesses, this is the before times, before COVID-19, and they want to come to the area, they talk about how many students are in Marquette. I always tell them, don't forget about the community. In fact, right, students are only there 6 months out the year, right, and they're not there during the holidays, which is the most important key for any retailer. I don't care if you're Target, Walmart, or if you're a restaurant. So I always try to work with our businesses. Don't forget about the community. We have a grocery store now. They are doing pretty successful because they reached out to the community before the impact of this pandemic, making those connections. So when the students aren't there, people realize that that's an asset and that's an amenity that they can use. So very key to don't forget about the community. Engage the community. I love that investment term. I think that's really important, Adam, but engage and think about the community in a greater context. Not just, I love the students, but they're a part of that pie chart. They're just a part of that equation to make a successful business.
This is great insight. I agree with everything you all are saying. We try to get the community involved, and we try to make sure the businesses communicate with each other and don't feel alone. Specifically this year, we had a lot of retailers comparing their sales numbers from this year to last year, which was one of our best years, arguably. Great support from the community, great retail sales in 2019. And then looking at 2020, there was a lot of businesses that were just really down and hard on themselves because they were comparing those numbers. And we just had to say, stop comparing last year to this year. You can't. But also, you're not alone. And connecting those business owners to realize, hey, you're not the only one hurting. This is a worldwide thing. Even here in Hayes, just making those connections and feeling supported was very important. But then that goes just hand in hand with making changes too. When one restaurant does something really cool, it's okay for another restaurant to copy it. It's not, at this point, we're not competing. We're all in this together. So if this is successful for one of you down here, it's going to be successful for all of you down here. And so just creating that camaraderie is really important. And we now have downtown dialogue. I see you, Keith. I'll quit talking in just a second. We have downtown dialogues where we invite the business owners in, but also community members in to ask questions and give comments and give feedback on what they want to see from the businesses. But then we have happy hours that are just for business owners to come together and vent and rant and scream and get stuff off their shoulders if they need to. So we have two very different groups that meet on a monthly basis to try and involve everyone. Go ahead, Keith.
No, Sarah, I'm glad you brought that up. I will say, and this goes back to, I believe, Adam and probably what Douglas was saying, that during this time, I think business improvement districts and other similar entities like that, Main Street districts who are in college areas, we are showing our value. And I think a lot of people, sometimes I talk to some of our businesses, I don't know why I even have this here. And, this is just a waste of my tax money, a waste of my time. And now that we are advocating, and Douglas, just like you said, we're advocating on policy. We even brought in the lieutenant governor and the governor to talk to 40 of our businesses. We're bringing in resources, advocating to bring in over $500,000 worth of PPE support. People see that value, and I think it's so important. I know it was in one of Adam's earlier slides that is so important and key to us. And then the other thing I would say that's also key is that, Douglas, I could imagine with you being a business owner, and Sarah, you mentioned it with the happy hours, we had to kind of like verbally slap some of our business owners. The sky was falling, everything is bad. I got to lay everybody off, and I had like, hey, hold up. This is America. We are down for the count, but we can come back. We strategize, we plan, we're innovators. The sky is falling. Yeah, the sky is falling all across the world. So let's get it together. Are you going to be with us, or are you going to go? Are you going to go? And it's fine if you can't hack. If it doesn't work, you have to close the business. Good, but we can't sit here and just cry and whine. I had some business owners I was very frank with, like, listen, we're here to support you, but you can't just whine and expect the world to change. It is difficult. We had one of our steakhouses go 95% of their staff, but they're doing carry-out orders. They're doing things online. They're doing take and bake pro. You have to be able to do things. It's part of who we are, and it's in our DNA to respond and things like this. And we have to be creative. So very important.
Go ahead, Doug.
One part of our survival program in New Brunswick, which was not deliberate, but it happened organically, was the communication amongst the business owners. And it is at an all-time high. There's been some leaders in town that are very good at the financial stuff, whether it's the PPP loans or the ERC credits or all kinds of grants that are available, and they know how to navigate all those waters. And then there's others that are good at the mechanics of the restaurant and what the rules are with the governor's executive orders, et cetera. And by kind of opening up that line of communication throughout town, it's been amazing what can happen, because again, someone mentioned we're all in this together type mentality that everybody says, oh, we're all in the same boat. But yeah, but my boat needs to float, right? So we're in the same boat, but we're not. I need my boat to float. So, but we all have realized it's a heck of a lot easier for all of our boats to float if they're all together. I know it's cliched, but the pandemic really has exposed those businesses that are not enthusiastic to be part of the team, so to speak. But it's exposed the opposite as well. And there's been so much success with this communication. And I would urge everyone to have you know, especially these days, everybody wants to have a meeting. And if I know in the restaurant business, we're all around people all the time. We sit 6 feet apart. We find a tent to sit underneath, and we'll just have a meeting. And it's amazing the kind of dialogue that comes out of that, and camaraderie, I should say. That's when the phone calls and the text messages start floating around amongst the businesses. And I'm sure that when a fellow operator calls or texts you, it's different than when Keith or Adam, or, you know what I mean? It's just different. So what it's been, again, it's the communication, I think, and flowing together, ebbing and flowing together, and keeping each other accountable. Nobody wants to really break the rules, so to speak, and push the boundaries of all the regulations if everyone else is doing what they're supposed to be doing. You don't want to be the one guy on TV that got nailed for over occupancy or getting people sick with COVID. And those people get shunned quickly. So it's been a healthy thing for everyone to maintain that community health together.
One of the comments is, we are all in the same storm, but in very different boats. But we can always remember that rainbows come after the storms too. Keith, I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about what's happening in your community. You alluded to it a little bit with your spiel. So I'm excited for everyone to hear what you are doing.
And no problem, Sarah. I'll make it brief, and I would get 2 items. One, we put together a program. Was really the associate director, and I guess she was watching an online cooking show, maybe on PBS, and she came back and said, "Can we do some type of virtual cooking with our restaurants?" Our restaurants were pretty much sitting there vacant with not much business. And we came with this idea, kind of like a take and bake, where we asked each restaurant to put together some type of menu and then sell the food that then people can come home and cook. And so we called it with the hashtag Made in the Near West Side. Used the platform of social media. So Facebook was the platform. Some people did it live, where restaurants did it live, where they actually had all the ingredients right there, and people could come to the shop, pay for all the supplies, whether it was steak, macaroni and cheese, pies, whatever. We've done it about 30 times, 30 different series, episodes. And so people would come home and then watch and follow the restaurateur go through this cooking. It was really interesting because it brought business into the community. It increased online traffic. So a lot of people who weren't aware of what the restaurants had to offer was important. And it kept our businesses and still people employed and still moving. And so I mentioned about 5 O'Clock Steakhouse. They actually sold a steak package, and they're pretty expensive to begin with, but they sold a steak package, and then people came home and followed the cooking instructions online. We had Daddy's Soul Food Restaurant had a mac and cheese deal. Triciclo Peru, which is empanada shop and bar. They had empanadas, and it was amazing. And the reaction, we were blown away because people are bored. They're sick of eating the same food that they always eat at home, something quick. This gave people something to do, connected our community better, increased follows and likes and subscriptions online as far as social media for our businesses. So it was a major tool for us, and it was done on a fluke. It's like, let's just try it. And so it's been really successful. We even had Central Standard Distillery. They had cocktail hour, and they go to their shop, pick up the beverages, and then they had these special cocktails that you could make. So that was really cool for us. It was a really neat program and got everybody excited. The other thing I would just share is that also working with Central Standard Distillery, the byproduct of making alcohol, which I'm unaware of, can be used as sanitizer. And we worked with them and got a boatload of sanitizer out to a lot of our businesses, going back to my earlier comment about making sure that people are staying healthy. So those are 2 programs I think were really helpful. Once again, putting money towards, when it came to Central Standard Distillery and the sanitizer, we put money in their pocket, got their name out there. It was a great story because they actually donated to several of our large public housing facilities. And so once again, thinking creatively, innovatively was really helpful during this time.
Keith, with the restaurant take and bakes, was that on a specific page? Like, was there one page for people to go to for all 30 programs, or was it on each individual restaurant's social media?
So we created our own homepage on our in our website that people could go to, and it listed the different times and who we have listed. We then use social media, Facebook, for the video piece. So we would then ask each business or restaurateur to provide, either do it live or provide us a pre-done video. Then we would upload, and then we would put it at a certain time, actually create an event on Facebook, and then it would upload as the event.
Very neat. We had a distillery in Dodge City, Kansas, which is about 2 hours away from Hayes, do the very same thing that your distillery did. And it was very neat. They gave it away too. And the photos of just cars lining the streets to get this free sanitizer was pretty incredible. So I know that's been done in a couple of locations, but just the innovation that this pandemic has caused is pretty inspiring. Adam and Doug, any questions or comments for Keith?
No, it's impressive what you're doing. You know, and you have kind of a very, very interesting and creative community.
Yeah, we, you know, partnerships with restaurants and everything that you're describing, it again, it speaks to the creativity that it comes out of situations like this, and things that will certainly, you know, a take and bake meal or anything similar, that there's no reason for that to stop when things get back to quote unquote normal. You know, we have a steakhouse in New Brunswick that's been there for 30 years called Stage Left Steak, and something that they do is a Zoom wine dinner, and they literally deliver wine to your house with the food, but then they conduct the whole you know, wine tasting on Zoom, and they get, you know, this is all a bundle price that they do, and it's been very, very successful to get the word out that they're still relevant. It's maybe people don't feel safe or comfortable going to their restaurant, or maybe it's too cold, but they're happy to come into your living room or your kitchen and share their wine expertise with you, and it's been very, very successful for them.
Aren't you all glad it's lunchtime after this?
Yeah.
We've got a question. It says, Graduate Hotels has done a good job of tapping into the history, spirit, and tradition of the colleges whose towns their hotels are in. Alumni are proud of their schools. What about appealing to alumni networks to support businesses in town as customers, operators, and/or investors? Any thoughts?
You know, it's a great idea. You know, and I think that it's a little labor intensive, right? But I do think that they tend to be, you know, groups who care passionately about not just the institution, but the neighborhood. And, you know, I think the way I would maybe think about it is not like an emergency, like stopgap measure, but like take this opportunity to, like, you know, think about how to do that over the long term. There are some good examples. So, you know, the Hamilton Initiative, which Colgate and the city of Hamilton put together on in their market. And they engaged alumni in every way, from, you know, revitalizing the inn, like the Graduate Hotels, to kind of like putting you know, weekends together and activities and ways to kind of like, you know, invest in the community. So there might be sort of like ways to sort of do that. And I think, to another question in the chat, what it sort of gets to is one of the potential roles of the institution, you know, and actually, you know, engaging alumni relations as a partner with, you know, the bid or the economic development department or whoever it is that sort of is doing this. And that would be kind of an exciting, you know, maybe this is the time to do it. And it sort of starts a longer process of how do you convert alums into, you know, kind of investors or partners in helping kind of drive the districts.
We in New Brunswick did a program when Rutgers started playing their Big Ten football schedule, and we did a citywide game watch. Well, how did we do that? We had outdoor dining setups already. We had you know, tables 6 feet apart and occupancy limits and everything else. And we put up large screens and we showed the game. Well, why are we doing that if the students aren't there? Well, you know, take Adam's chart, and right, so 20% on that chart is students, but then you know, the visitors are 35%, the locals are 25%. All of those pieces of that pie have an overlap, right? So if you live in town, you likely root for Rutgers. Or, you know, if you're one of those visitors, you likely have an affinity towards Rutgers. So we knew, geez, if we put up these big screen, and we got the screens that are on the side of a truck that you'd see a billboard, like a digital billboard. And if you put that in town and you say, hey, we're having a game watch, will people show up? Well, they did. And it was on NJ.com, and we had press about it. Now, the school was not allowed to sanction this. The school said, well, we can't have public gatherings and the alumni groups and everything. They weren't allowed to say, oh, everyone come out to this game watch party. However, as businesses and as the SID, we were allowed to do it. And then the hotels were able to say, hey, stay in town, watch the game and stay at our hotel. You know, go to the restaurant and get a discount on your hotel room. So that kind of synergy that we experienced with something as basic as just putting a game on TV, but overlapping that pie chart, it was really, really, it worked really well. And again, it's that consumer confidence combined with that population. Yes, take out the students, but there's got to be somebody still around town that still has the same interests.
Talk about, if you can, one of the questions in the chat is, what, other than science and testing, how can the university continue to help local businesses and communities in downtowns? So I know Keith talked about how they're helping with education and testing. Any other examples of how the universities are coming together to support the downtowns or the small businesses in your communities?
I would just say from my end, Sarah, we have a boatload of interns. I meet with them once a week, and they are handling a number of different online initiatives for us. Virtual is where it's at right now. We're building that following, we're building the subscription, we're building the likes, and they're creating the content for us. When we do blog posts, they have to do not just text, but they got to do video, they got to do audio, they got to do pictures. We're doing a whole bunch of social media posts. I mean, we have 6 interns, and usually we only have 2. But if we're pushing them to the limits and we're like, listen, no, we need your help, because we want, after this is all said and done, we want to show that we have some strength with those connections we made during this process.
Mm-hmm. I know for us, we have a town gown committee, and we are very committed to meeting on a monthly basis and sharing the schedules of both of the organizations. And we have a Google Calendar that's kind of a living, breathing document to share everything that's happening in the community and on campus, so that there's as little conflict as possible, and also just open communication and that collaboration that can be created. We rely heavily on interns as well, and there's actually a great partnership between our university and one of our community foundations, that they actually partner together to pay for the internship, so that the businesses aren't stuck with that expense. They get an intern that's of high quality because they're getting paid, but that expense is not handed to the small business. And so I know we rely heavily on the university for that as well. I interrupted somebody.
We're also doing a workshop with the School of Public Planning to put together more of a visionary project for our downtown. Now, that's something that's very, very common, right? So, universities often, use a whole semester's worth of classes to put together a plan for a downtown in many, many cities. However, we're super excited about it now because of all of this new stuff that we're featuring with this pandemic, with the outdoor dining, and it's shifting I believe when we do this fall with Rutgers, and they come up with what their plan and vision could be after doing their surveys and talking to folks, et cetera, I would not be surprised if it's very different now than it would have been a year ago or 2 years ago, because of this shift in how everyone thinks of real estate.
Yeah. One thought, I think, we do a great job at engaging planning departments sometimes, in kind of projects like this, but business school departments, I think, are underutilized, and undergraduates too, right? There are very smart and creative kids, looking at studying marketing and studying, business development, and I think there's another pool of talent that's really committed to the neighborhoods to tap into there.
Kate in the Q&A said Cornell invested in a small business resiliency fund with the city of Ithaca and our county chamber of commerce. So there is another suggestion for you. We've got a couple more questions and we're running out of time. How have you managed to get merchants to want to work with you and together? Our merchants seem to want to do their own thing and not engage with us or each other.
Sarah, I would say to that question, I read that question earlier, and I would say, I think one thing is that it's always good to have those connections before things like this happen. And so for us, we made it a point, we do a bi-monthly newsletter. So 2 newsletters go out each month. And then I personally send an email when it's necessary to all of our businesses. Hey, there's a grant coming up. Hey, there's an opportunity here. And we try to build that connection. So I know it's, that's water under the bridge now, but having that connection, but also would say, having it before something happens, but then also consistency. Own it. I'd say I own it. I am the face of Near West Side, and I want to make sure our business know if there's an issue, I'm the guy to go to. Even if I can't solve it, I'm gonna find somebody to try to solve it, but you want to own it and you want to be consistent with those businesses. They really appreciate that. They call me and say, hey, Keith, can you help us out in any way? And that's both large and small businesses for me.
Yeah, our executive director at City Center, her name's Pam, and she's done a great job over the years. And what's interesting is she always fielded these phone calls about, too much trash on the sidewalks, or maybe someone's trash didn't get picked up, or the minor things that people don't really appreciate. But then fast forward to now, and she's fielding phone calls from people regarding, sidewalk cafe permitting and things that really, really affect your bottom line or ability to succeed in the environment that we're in. And that equity that was built up with the city to navigate some of the stuff like the fire inspectors and the people that you just have to have a relationship with, again, that consistency paid off during this pandemic.
Yeah, you almost have to make yourself invaluable during the downtime so that when the tough times come, you're ready. We have a weekly e-newsletter that goes out to our community that says everything that's happening in downtown for the weekend. We also have a private Facebook group for all of our, what we call downtown Hayes stakeholders. And that's business owners and managers and building owners, you name it. They're all in this group, and we communicate sometimes on a daily basis of what's happening in the community, whether that's street closings or that's the upcoming event or Fort Hayes is getting ready to go back into session. We utilize that Facebook group a lot because I think we mentioned it earlier, we get a lot of emails now and they often get missed. But if you have a specific group that you can go to check on what's going on every single day and to communicate with each other. Social media is huge and it's going to continue to grow. Even, I know a lot of the kids are getting off Facebook, but for a lot of our downtown shops, they're looking at that 30 to 50-year-old age group, and that's who's on Facebook, and it's continuing to grow, and that goes for our business owners as well. So that has been very helpful for our community. The restaurants have been great at adapting the way that they operate and keep afloat. Retailers need to get more creative in their operations. Any suggestions for that? I know a lot of ours had to go and scramble to create a website, and Square sites came in very handy at the time. Any other suggestions?
Doug, you may have more than me, but one of the things that we suggest, to back to our earlier discussion about, kind of like cooperatively funding some of these things is some of the things that retailers need to do to improve their business are expensive, right? And, you own one shop in town, it's sort of hard to make the investment in some of the sort of changes. And, one of the roles that a bid can do, or even an anchor institution or an economic development movement, is kind of like, not just jointly fund, but just kind of like help a group of business owners collectively make that investment, right? So whether it's moving over to sort of a new pay system or kind of like, neat and clean is expensive in the COVID age, right? Sort of jointly invest in some of those kind of like additional cleaning costs, and, maybe the institution is just playing a facilitating role, but it can go a long way towards. And also the other thing is it's hard to know what to do, right? Doug, you probably sit around saying, I've got a limited amount of dollars and 100 good ideas, right? But just taking some of the noise out of it, like let's collectively agree to do these 10 things and just, you know, there's no silver bullet, right? Doing 10 things is better than just thinking about 100 things. So just kind of like getting everybody, all the oars pulling in the same direction is maybe of a lot of value.
Yeah.
Sara?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Douglas.
So one thing we did in New Brunswick as well is a grant reimbursement program that was
Yeah.
allocated monies for COVID related expenses. So, you know, if you were a retailer and you needed to buy plexiglass or, you know, hand sanitizer, et cetera, we made a streamlined way to, you know, get reimbursed for that. You know, everyone has different levels of enthusiasm to fill out grant paperwork, but our job is to make it available and make it available and make it equitable, where if you have a larger place, maybe you get a little bit more money, and if you got a tiny place, you get a little less. But it worked really well, I think, for our city. And again, we don't want the situation happening where, you know, you walk into a retailer and they don't have sanitizer because they can't afford it. It's our job to make sure everyone's healthy, because those customers are coming to my restaurant after they're in that retailer. So, you know, again, I said the word synergy a few times, but it's truly between the university community, the retailers, the restaurants, the hotels, everyone downtown and on campus, really, without working together, the health and the consumer confidence, which equates to dollars, will not be there.
So,
Keith, I'll let you have the final comment before we sign off.
no problem. I really appreciate this. I would say I put in the comment section, I give a shout out to, I don't know him personally, but only met him once, Richard Florida. He's the author of Creative Class. He has been really insightful. He's what they call a thinker, and he's been giving some really good insight as far as what we should expect coming up for business districts and town and gown communities. And I would say, I just would encourage everybody. I think that we're going to definitely bounce back from this. I think people are hungry to get outside, to socialize. And it is, I mean, I think we need to brace for seeing a lot of our businesses be overwhelmed with people who just, as much as we love our loved ones, being in the house 24/7 for the past 9 months has been hectic for a lot of us. And getting outside, seeing people laugh, enjoy great food and drinks is going to be really important to our health and mental health.
Very good. Well, I know we joked earlier, why is this just an hour? And it's because we could talk all day. So I want to thank each of you once again for taking time out of your days and schedules to prepare for this. I know we had several calls leading up to it, but also just to visit about what's happening in your communities and share across the country what we are doing. If you found this conversation interesting, we want to invite you to a networking opportunity. We do have a small group of downtown directors or community directors, similar to what we did here today, that meet at least every month to talk about what's happening in their communities. So if you are interested in that, I'm putting an email in the chat right now, jeff@hillsboroughstreet.org. Go ahead and send Jeff Morrison an email. He's happy to get you added to that, and we'll continue these conversations and networking. And of course, thanks to ITGA and Beth and Susan for their help in preparing this. And we will look forward to continuing the Town Gown Turnaround series. But again, thank you to each of our panelists, and thank you to those of you who joined us today. And we will see you next time on the ITGA webinars and the Town Gown Turnaround series.